All right, a couple of non-game things. I'm also going to talk about Ice Cube, the rapper, and how I'm tougher than him, because there's something else that people asked about. So here, let me explain that one first, and I'll get to this one about money laundering. So I'm tougher than Ice Cube. Now, Ice Cube's a great guy, does a bunch of good stuff in the community. I really like his music, but I'm tougher than him. And here is why I have definitive proof of that. So first of all, this is the 80s, or I guess this had to be this had to be the '90s because this had to be right. This was his first. It was his first solo album. The period of my life was really hazy. But let's just say first solo album tour. He's coming out and he's playing these lousy clubs. And one is Excalibur nightclub in Cleveland. Ends up later in life, I would find out like, I know the owner of this club. They were like neighbors to ours, and like when we grew up, but like we grew up in a dirt poor track housing neighborhood, but yet they grew up and got a nightclub. But okay, whatever. Right now it is not in a particularly great part of town, but it's not in a bad part of town. I mean, I'd walk around there. There's parts of Cleveland like I wouldn't drive through, right? Like, so this is definitely not one of those parts, and this is fine. We're walking around, they're hanging out. Now, it is hard to explain to people pre-internet how easy it was to scam people pre-internet. So in the 80s, I went to Kent State, and my friend who had a college radio station in the middle of the night, the classic punk rock thing, right? He would do this thing where he would just call in guest lists because nobody in Cleveland, like nobody at KSU, the radio station, WKSU, whatever, one's a classical, one's a rock, at least back then. And nobody there contacted anybody up in Cleveland. So he's just like, well, I'm just going to call in a guest list. So the first time he does it, he's just like, did a nightclub. And he's like, hey, we have 10 winners. Hey, this is Greg from WKSU. We've got 10 winners tonight. Can I give you the names so you can put them on the guest list? And they do. I think they call back like the first couple times and he's answering the phone at WKSU. So like, hey, that's all that you could prove. And so we started doing that for rock shows. And the thing is like, the venues don't know. They're like, well, maybe the band, maybe the record label, maybe somebody else did a promotion. So, okay. And so we're going to all these shows for free. So we went to every show for free. It was great. And so with that, that night, we are going to see Julio's Creed. Now, there's a band Chrome, which is like this industrial punk rock San Francisco band. Super awesome. Lead singer leaves, does himself Julio's Creed. It's not so good. We're seeing him at some lousy place down by West 25th. And it's not good. We leave. And the one guy's like, hey, I got tickets to Ice Cube. You like Ice Cube? I'm like, yeah, let's go. And so we go down there. Now there's a little bit of noise in the parking lot, but it's a safe neighborhood. Like it was Cleveland goes. It's always funny because someone will be like in Seattle, it's a bad neighborhood and they'll look like a Pine and Third. And like, dude, give me a break. But so we go in. We are on the guest list. Well, ends up Ice Cube was also out in the parking lot when the little bit of kerfuffle happened. And he's like, that's a gunshot. I'm out of here. And we're like, that's a gunshot. Now let's go inside. So there, I am tougher than him. The problem with that story, though, is Ice Cube bailed on the whole show. So we're in this bar. And they announced they have these two little kids going up and rapping. They're just trying to kill time. They know Ice Cube's not coming back because Ice Cube is not as manly as me. And so eventually they say, hey, we're canceling the event. And a riot broke out. You could probably guess the makeup of the crowd. Not that many people look like me. And it turned ugly. And rightfully so, like, because people were getting screwed and they weren't going to there's no refunds here. Everyone knows they're not getting a refund at the box office. So I grab everybody and we jump behind the bar and I'm like, opportunity. We're drinking for free tonight. And start pouring drinks. The cops are in the middle fighting people. Like literally they just formed a circle and they're just whacking people. And there's a brawl happening. But the guy who called in the free tickets is standing on the other side. He didn't get on the other side of the police line. And he's getting punched. He's trying to light a cigarette. And he's just getting punched by this dude. And he's trying to be like, I'm just going to ignore this and it's going to go away. I don't know. And so me and two other friends were like, we got to go rescue him. And so we stepped out from behind the bar. I remember being out in a parking lot. I remember being a helicopter. I remember an ambulance guy shoving his hands up my face and saying, yeah, you're okay. And then I remember coming to him on a table and a cop just whacking me and telling me I gotta leave. And I just turned and I spit out. So these are all fake. My teeth. And I'm like, can you give me a minute? He's like, You got a few. And so there. Out of that, people are like, well, you're racist now because you hate all. No. I just know I'm tougher than an ice cube. Man, when stuff happens. Right? It's nothing. Everyone was getting ripped off. Like, we're all getting ripped off together. But yeah, so he's cheap, fake. And I have Ice Cube to thank for that, because he is not as tough as I am. If he was tough as I am, he would have showed up at that show. I would have signed a great show. I would have seen him early in his career. It would have been awesome. He'd still kick my ass, though. Like, be clear, he'd kick my ass. I have some height on him. Because I'm like Conan height. But he'd kick my ass. But okay, so to this one. Again, pre-internet, like, how do you get computer parts? How do you do anything? Well, you go to the back of Computer Shopper Weekly and you look at, like, back of newspapers and, like, you're like back alley in it, right? And you find this place, like, someone's like, hey, these guys got really cheap stuff. Go over there. So we go over there and they're like, they have dirt cheap stuff. But it's like weird Russian dudes smoking cigars in back, beautiful women up front. It's a good combination if you're selling computer parts to dudes. Just going to say. But so they're selling computer parts to us, and we're buying them. And then they're like, hey, we'll put systems together. And then all of a sudden they just go away. And then in the back of a car lot, they open a new one. But it's not the same people. But it's the same people. And they're like, what are you going to do? And found out later, the other one got shut down for laundering money. And so this one is the same thing. But I guess, like, laundering money is just my discount because like, their crimes are helping me. Chill. At some point, Old Man Murray, when we used to run that, we used to sell stuff. We used to sell hardware, which is a mistake. We eventually got out of that because it was just a fool's errand going after that. But we had, like, a credit account where you had to go run and you had to do verify, like how you used to have to do credit checks and all of that. You had to do it all yourself. It was But we brought in a system once, our own system, to them, just be like, hey, this motherboard's messed up, and they replaced it. And then also we had all these fraudulent charges. You can guess it. They went on the hard drive and ran a bunch of stuff and stole money from us. And I went back in and I'm like, hey, you guys are the only people who had access to this, one of your guys. And the boss came out and it was clear one of the guys was him. And he's like, you have a problem? Not my problem. And that was it. That was it. And it was like, do you want to keep buying this really cheap stuff from me? Because you're buying these computers that we're putting together for under $1,000 and you're selling them for cash for $1,800. And we're all not talking about this little game we're playing here and making money on the side. And we're like, it's part of it. And so, yeah, back in the, I guess that'd be 90s, in Cleveland, you used to be able to get a bunch of good computer parts really cheap from the Russian middlemen. And it wasn't just like laundering money. They were also doing the classic thing of buying things that were supposed to be being shipped overseas that were tax-free and then selling them back internally, which for the buyer is fine. For the seller, not so fine. They get busted again. I don't know if they reformed again. I don't know. And hey, Vlad or whoever, no shit on yours. I'm sure it was all legal. I don't need that after